From humble beginnings come great things. Over 100 years ago, things were very different. In 1915, a young man from Georgia came to a sleepy little area called Bradentown to start the Dollar Limit Store, which would later become the $5 Limit Store. And from those humble beginnings have come Bealls department stores. That young man from Georgia, R.M. Bell Sr., and his son, E.R., and E.R.'s son, Bob, and their families and their colleagues have built a business that is unequaled in its success and scope. Many other businesses have come and gone in 100 years, but Bealls still thrives, and it does so with the same values that were evident 100 years ago: honesty, integrity, and commitment. Through world wars, economic depression, disasters, and fierce competition, Bealls continues to succeed because of their core belief in serving their customers and serving their community. R.M. Bell always had the retail business in him. At 12 years old, he started selling Christmas firecrackers in his father's general store in Moultrie, Georgia, and he never looked back. But in the early 1900s, times were tough, and the boll weevils were taking their toll on Georgia's farmland.
He was born in Dixie, Georgia, but grew up in Moultrie. He went to a business college in Columbus, Georgia, where he met my mother, who was taking business courses there. Then he came to Florida, to Ocala, near Ocala, a place called Martell, where he ran a general store, kind of a commissary for the turpentine industry there. That's when he came back to Columbus and got my mother, married my mother, and brought her. They were in Martell for a couple of years, and then they came to Palmetto when my grandfather and my uncle and my dad opened a store in Palmetto.
In 1910, R.M. moved to Florida and ran the commissary for a turpentine camp outside Ocala. He and his wife Florence eventually settled in Palmetto, and in 1914, working with his father and uncle, they operated the Globe General Store. But R.M. had a different vision.
After a couple of years, my dad decided that he wanted to go on his own. He came across the river. There was no bridge then, but there was a ferry. Came across the river to Bradenton and opened the Dollar Limit Store, which is on what's now Old Main Street. And that was the beginning of his business.
In 1915, at the age of 22, he took the ferry across the Manatee River to Bradentown, a growing town of 4,000 people, investing his capital of $2,500 entirely in merchandise. He opened the Dollar Limit Store on Main Street, selling piece goods and commodities to pioneer families. He turned his wooden shipping crates upside down to use as fixtures. And at that very early age, R.M. learned three key things that would last him his entire life: 1. Be fiscally responsible.
Many family businesses enjoy some success, enjoy taking money out of the business, and failing to reinvest in the business. And, I think it really started with R.M. Bell Sr., reinvesting in the business. And, he lived his life in a very modest way for a successful businessman as he was. And he passed that value down to Egbert Bell and passed it down to Bob Bell. And, over the years, the family has taken a very small fraction of the money out of the business. And, 95% plus of the profit over the years has just been plowed back into reinvesting in the business.
2. Always respect your customer and give them value.
In 1976, 2 days before Christmas, I had taken the children to the mall for one last fling of riding the train and just the fun of being in the mall at Christmas time and all the merriment. And driving back from the mall, these sirens, we heard all these sirens, and so we pulled off to the side of the road, and I said, everybody together, we said, "Oh, God bless someone, somebody's house is on fire." Well, we got to our house. It was our house on fire. The house was totaled. The fire engine pulled out. We're looking at each other. We're all dirty, wet, smoky, cold, hungry, the whole thing. So my husband said, "Let's just go to Bealls." And Bob Bell, Sr., was in the men's department, which was the first part of the store. He saw Phil and he says, "Phil, get anything that you want. We'll add it up and you can take care of it later." Oh. He says, "Don't worry about it. Get whatever you need." And then he gave us the Christmas tree. One of the store trees, he says, "And take this too, And that was one of the kindest, nicest things that we have ever experienced. Ever, ever, ever.
Bealls department store. Very nice store in town. We would shop there all the time. But the one thing you could not do was try on the hats. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a black church on Sunday morning. But in most of those churches, the hats are the thing. I mean, there was a time when you could even tell who was the pastor's wife because she had on the fanciest hat. Hats were big. We could not try on the hats, and that was frustrating because you want to know what it looks like, what it feels like, the attitude it gives you before you get it home. My dad talked to Mr. Bell about this. And Mr. Bell says, "I'm going to change that policy."
And 3, always remember that you are part of a community.
Bradenton was a tiny, tiny town when he opened his business here. And, he saw an influx of seasonal guests, and he said, we've got to figure out a way as a town that we can bring more seasonal guests into Florida.
After the Great War, with the advent of inflation, the dollar limit store became the $5 limit store and continued to prosper. RM in 1923 brought the St. Louis Cardinals to Bradentown, the first Major League Baseball team ever to come here for spring training.
He was very involved in McKechnie Field, and he, his Sunday afternoons, the stores were closed on Sunday then, was driving out to McKechnie Field to see how the grass was growing, so he was going to be ready for spring training.
In 1924, RM purchased 50 feet of frontage on Manatee Avenue right across from the old courthouse, and the amount paid for that square footage is the most ever paid in Manatee County at that time. The new store opened for the 1924 Christmas season, and Bradentown became Bradenton. The boom times ended in Florida with the 1926 crash. Businesses collapsed. The stock market failed, and in 1932, in the depths of the Depression, RM lost the store to the bank. And even though RM stayed on as the operator of the store, the loss deeply affected him.
In the early 30s, he was unable to pay his bills, and he lost the store. Essentially, the bank owned the store, but the local banker didn't really want the store, so he allowed us to continue to run it and slowly pay those debts back until finally, in maybe 10 years or so, would you say, he got the ownership of the store back. But the bank was very understanding and helpful in that regard, yeah.
He learned both from a lender's perspective when he was in the provisioning business and from a borrower's perspective when he was in the retail business that credit is very risky and very dangerous. And so from that, our business has become one that's very financially conservative and isn't borrowing a lot of money and isn't getting leveraged. As a result, we have a sustainability, a financial strength that allows us to kind of continue to move forward even when times are tough, like they have been in Florida in the last five or so years.
And yet, during the boom times and the crash, RM continued his community work with the Kiwanis Club to develop what would become the world's largest trailer park. RM knew early the value of the snowbird customer to his community and to his business, and he remained chairman of the park committee for 25 years.
He did have a good feel for the community, and I think his loyalty was really to the community above all, and to his family, of course. But he was very involved in the Kiwanis Club. He and a few others in the Kiwanis Club did start that Bradenton Trailer Park, which for a time then was the largest trailer park in the world,
Right.
I guess. And they could have done that for themselves, but they did it for the Kiwanis Club, making it, a very wealthy Kiwanis Club all these years. And I think that's just an example of how he thought, which was about the community.
Well, R.M. Bell was a leader. He was a leader of this community when this community was struggling, coming through the Depression. And what I think makes it even more unique, Bell's business was struggling during this period, but he did not lessen his focus and enthusiasm with helping this community grow and be successful.
As World War II loomed, RM's son joined him in the business. But soon thereafter, enlisted in the Army Air Corps to serve his country. Began to play a vital part in the development of the business. And in 1944, the Bealls bought the business back from the bank for $40,000. The experience engendered a fundamental business philosophy still in practice today. Bell's new growth is funded almost entirely on earnings. The business adopted the name of Bell's Department Store, and once again, business was booming. With developing strategies for growth and development, the second store was opened in 1956 in the Westgate Shopping Center in conjunction with Publix, which would become a longtime anchor partner. ER's dream of a retail chain began to emerge as RM continued to manage the downtown location. The store in Venice opened, then Punta Gorda, then Melbourne, then Dunedin and Englewood. A distribution center and technology systems were added as Bealls moved into the modern era. And RM was recognized as the Distinguished Citizen of Manatee County in 1969. From selling Christmas firecrackers at the age of 12 to being part of an operation with 19 stores and over $25 million in sales, in 1979, at the age of 86, RM passed away after spending almost 75 years as a merchant, businessman, and community leader.
He continued to provide that leadership and direction all the way up through, I think he worked until the very last year of his life. He just stayed at the helm. And if you came downtown to the original Dollar Limit store, there you would find Mr. Bell folding pants and helping customers.
He wanted to be an aviator when he went into the military in the Army Air Force at that time. And he didn't have very good vision, so he memorized the eye chart. He got the eye chart, he memorized it, went in the next morning, read it off totally correctly, but they had changed the eye chart that evening. So he ended up being a weatherman instead of a pilot, and didn't go overseas. He was based in California, where I was then born. And he always regretted that, but I think it could have been very fortunate that he couldn't see very well in that regard.
As World War II ended, the world began to change, and nowhere was that change more evident than Florida. New highways, the Space Coast, new businesses, and a growing population all contributed to Florida's growth and development. And E.R. Bell took notice. He recognized that Florida's growth and development were inevitable, and his vision for a Bealls retail chain began to take shape.
Well, the great secret was that Florida was growing fairly rapidly, and whatever the location was, if you waited a few years, it would be better and better and better.
ER began to develop a strategic plan that would coincide with Florida's growth in population, the changes in shopping habits and locales, and most importantly, new and improved ways of doing business. But first and foremost for ER was people, his employees, his customers, and his family. ER always took an interest in who he was hiring and was always looking out for his customers.
You know, you could tell from the get-go that this was his baby. I mean, this was his life, and everything that went on here was very important to him, whether it be a big decision or a little decision. But overall, and I would say this is the same about Bob and Beverly and now Matt, is they truly care about the people.
He was just this gracious Southern gentleman with a soft voice that you wanted to lean forward to make sure you could hear him because he talked real low.
And he was like a father figure and just genuinely cared. You can always pick up when someone is not true or real, but he was genuinely, he cared about people, and he would always, he didn't have to come in my office every time he was in the building, but he did. and just to check and see how everything was going.
ER's vision began to take shape in 1956 when the Westgate Shopping Center, the second Bealls department store, opened.
When Egbert Bell suggested to his father that they go out of town and start a store way out of town in Westgate Shopping Center, his father was like, why would we go all the way out there? But of course, the state was growing, people were driving more, the somewhat suburban development of Florida was now underway.
My grandfather thought that was a crazy idea, and he said, you know, downtown will always be where people shop. So our father didn't think so. So he decided, and they amicably parted, and he went out to the Westgate store.
Well, I was involved on the Bell side. I was the Westgate store manager and a buyer. And then my father sadly died suddenly in 1974. Suddenly, my brother and I were running this shoe business, and we both were not particularly experienced, and frankly, we weren't very good. Egbert, I get a little choked up even thinking about this, called us and made it very clear that if we had any funding problems, because we were just leveraged from forever, that we had any funding problems, they stood ready to support us with some short-term financing if we needed it. And we did use that 4 times. And then it was a generous and heartfelt gesture that we have never forgotten. We probably would not have survived without Egbert's willingness to do that.
A significant aspect of the Westgate development was that ER had negotiated a handshake deal with Publix supermarkets. And that handshake developed into a long-time partnership with Publix for years to come.
Egbert developed a friendship with Joe Blanton at Publix, Jack Eckerd at Eckerd, John Crowder at Crowder's, and some other retailers. And Publix in particular was anxious to grow and really offered the opportunity to Egbert and Bealls to come with them. So while Bealls couldn't go to every shopping center Publix was going in, it was invited to join in a number of them.
Our father liked to say that we followed them around Florida. So they would scope out a town and decide that they would build a shopping center there, and then we would follow them because they had done the research.
It was not only a work-hard environment, but there was an element of fun.
Bealls began to develop outside of the region with expansion on the east coast of Florida, with store number 7 in Melbourne and the Fabric Center in Winter Haven.
And he would hire a helicopter when they were considering a location for a store, and you'd go down and he would say, okay, go up, to the pilot, so many feet. I want to be able to see what's around. Then they go up a little higher, and then they'd move over a little bit. And basically he was looking at rooftops to see around this particular site, what did it really look like, which you can't see so much on now you can do it with Google Earth. You don't have to do it, but back a few years back,
it's a lot more fun in a helicopter.
It was a lot more fun. He got in a helicopter many times just to go up and look and see if the data, the demographics from census tracts and all that stuff were tracking to what was really on the ground.
As development and growth continued, Bealls opened its first distribution center by the Westgate store. This was an important facet that now allowed merchandise to be shipped in bulk, as opposed to direct shipments to each store.
And Mr. Bell was probably, to me, was the greatest merchant I ever met. He could walk into a store, he could look at a rack of suits and say, wow, you've got blah, blah, blah invested in suits. He was just fantastic in merchandise. It was probably the best merchant I've ever met.
In the 1970s, when Bob Bell joined the company, he was given the task of opening and operating the new Dunedin store. As the business grew and flourished, new business systems were initiated to streamline and modernize the structure. Open-to-buy systems, merchandising reports, and a basic in-stock program were implemented. And in 1973, Bealls moved into the computer age with the purchase of its first computer system, the IBM System 3. Payroll and accounts payable were the first two applications.
His vision as the company was growing fairly rapidly was to hire a couple of experienced managers. He reached out to McCory's, which was a variety store, and hired a high-level person from McCory's. But he really had a passion, and his real passion was for hiring bright young people to drive and energize the business.
In the late 1970s, ER passed the titles of president and CEO to Bob and remained the chairman of the board.
You know, E.R. Bell turned the reins over to his son. I remember a number of times over the years when people would ask E.R. for something and he'd point them right over to his son saying, you know, Bob's the man here, it's not me anymore. But E.R. was always there for Bob, always behind the scenes, advising him on certain things.
The 1980s were a boom time for Bealls, with the addition of the first tractor-trailer service. In Florida Trend magazine, Bealls appeared for the first time on the list of the top 150 best places to work in the state.
They're truly caring about the people and thankful that the people are here doing a good job.
It's Southern, genteel, honest, truthful, whatever values.
As the new corporate center and new distribution center opened in 1985, Bealls owned 40 stores and obtained $82 million in business.
Well, if we didn't have a customer, we wouldn't have a job, and we wanted satisfaction. I remember Mr. Bell one time, this was a good story, in Ponte Gorda, and I had just made store manager, and we were selling, it was Black Friday or it was Thanksgiving or something, it was in the fall of the year, and we were selling sport coats. And back then we didn't give them the hanger, or no, we gave the hanger with the sport coat, and we were selling Hager slacks for like $14.97 or something like that. And there was people with arms of slacks that we were buying. And I explained to the gentleman at the time, I said, he started yelling in line, raising his voice, that he, wanted the hangers for the pants. And I said, well, sir, I can give you the hanger for the sport coat, but I can't give them for you the pants. And back then we didn't have pant hangers coming in, we'd recycle. So he went home and immediately wrote Mr. Bell a letter. Well, by Monday or Tuesday, I had a letter, or I had a phone call, I forget what it was, and I remember Mr. Bell saying, it's right or wrong, we're out to win the war. Give the man the damn hangers.
Due to ER developing a new concept for off-price business, Bealls Outlets was born.
So our decision was to go to the opposite extreme and try to get at or below Walmart prices for branded merchandise that would appeal to our Florida customer. That was a success. We're still opening stores, 10, 20, 30, some years 40 stores a year.
Before we knew it, they were commissioning me to go out and write new leases for the company because we weren't going to spin off enough Bealls stores to fulfill the growth needs of Bealls Outlets. So I got in on the ground floor and got to write about the first 80 leases that we did under Bealls Outlet.
In 1987, there was a significant addition to the Bealls establishment, the R.M. Bell Sr. Charitable Foundation. The R.M. Bell Sr. Charitable Foundation and other Bell family foundations fund numerous scholarships, as well as assisting charitable programs across the community.
The foundation began in 1987, and I am going to turn this over to Patricia in a minute because she's the administrator of all of our foundations and does an excellent job. In 1987, Bealls was able to sell the property of the original store on Manatee Avenue, not the Main Street store, but the Manatee Avenue store, to the county for their administration building. And that gave us the core of the money to start the foundation. We named it after my grandfather. It's the R.M. Bealls Senior Charitable Foundation. And the mission back then was youth and education, and that was at my father's direction. That's where he wanted to put the majority of our money here in the community. And I'm really proud to say that we now have 4 foundations. And I'll let Patricia talk about them, but we've got that one, which is the largest. We've got another company foundation. My brother and his wife have a family foundation, and my husband and I have our own foundation, but they all operate under a broad umbrella so that our missions stay aligned and we help support things that are important to the other. So before we started this, I couldn't tell you that I would ever have realized what joy I would get out of it.
Since inception, we have awarded more than 850 scholarships, and the total of those scholarships is well over $4 million. We have great relationships with organizations like the Palmetto Youth Center, the Boys and Girls Club, Brotherhood of Men, and the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, where we offer these scholarships. And one of the things that we wanted to do is to provide additional educational opportunity for these kids and give them the opportunity to go out there, learn, and bring that back to Manatee County or wherever they're from. A typical scholarship is a 4-year scholarship, and the amount of the scholarship is $15,000. And as we see educational costs go up, every little bit helps. And so we're very excited and honored to be able to provide the scholarship opportunity to so many young people.
That spirit of giving is evident throughout the entire Bealls organization. The corporation and its employees have a rich history of supporting many local groups serving those in need. In 1991, an additional 17 outlet stores were opened, and for the first time, outlet stores were opened outside of Florida, in Mesa and Phoenix, Arizona. In 1994, with over 160 stores and 3,000 employees, ER retired and became chairman emeritus, having realized his vision of a retail chain with great stores and merchandise, loyal customers, and dedicated employees.
Well, ER was one of these individuals that everyone that met him, that engaged with him, learned something.
From that initial expansion to the Westgate store, to a retail chain like no other, ER Bealls' emphasis on customer satisfaction, fiscal responsibility, and hard work made it all possible. From the very beginning, Bob Bell understood the business of retail. He and Beverly and Adie grew up in the stores, helping wherever they could and learning the business one step at a time.
Well, my earliest recollections related to business and my grandfather were the downtown store, obviously, which was his store, always was his store. I was first introduced there as a window washer, and I think I must have been around 10 or 11.
Probably. One thing I remember is that Bob and I would spend time waiting on our dad to finish up when the store closed, and then we would go home with him. And we would run, they were wooden floors, and we kind of in a horseshoe. We would run around those wooden floors, and Bob, being taller, would jump up and try to pull on the strings to the overhead fans. And when he got big enough that he could actually reach them and yanked a couple off, we had to stop that because it was a lot of trouble to replace them.
My dad was very much a stickler about setting the good example. You get in early, stay late, you don't take as long a lunch break or anything like that. And one of his main things was you have to learn to get along with all kinds of people, because you're going to get along with all kinds of people all your life. You're not going to like all of them. You're not going to dislike all of them. They're there, and you get along with them. Dad was trying to get me into the business, so he let me go to New York on buying trips a couple of times. I helped to open, I think it might have been the Punta Gorda store, which was a lot of fun. And again, it sort of all added to my adultness rather than childness, I guess. After all that, I knew I didn't want to work in retail. I was not a people person. I was a back office person.
After graduation from college and serving his country in the Army, Bob further developed his business acumen with one of the flagships of retail, Bloomingdale's in New York City. When Bob returned to Florida in 1970 and joined the company, he opened and managed the Dunedin store. Then he began to formulate his vision for the future of Bealls.
The stores were pretty well run. We had 7 stores when I came back, and again I opened the 8th store, that Dunedin store. But mainly ran the Dunedin store and learned how to operate a store.
In 1980, Bob became the president and CEO. Growth and development were key factors for Bob Bell. He realized early that the success of Bealls would be in the expansion of the Bealls brand to new and untried markets.
Bob Bell really cut his teeth under his father's tutelage, trying to get the right balance between putting on the brakes and pushing on the accelerator.
Bob Bell also understood something else that was important for success: that having the right people, the right infrastructure, and the right approach were critical for continued success.
When they really started growing, they started growing fast. And you had to have people. Everybody, the few people that had been doing it couldn't do everything. So you had to have people, and they hired the right people.
To that end, Bob began to structure a corporate environment with successful leaders like Conrad Szymanski, Steve Knopick, Paul Galizia, and others.
We are a values-driven business. And I believe, as in my role as CEO, the most important job that I have is creating a great working environment where people can thrive and prosper.
And just right down the line, we're just staffed with good people that I think are capable of doing anything that you call upon them to do.
I'm blessed because Bob Bell is still our chairman and still very interested in what's going on, and he's always there for me as a mentor.
The first thing is that when somebody like Bob Bell begins to trust you and says, well, maybe this guy can do a little more, that you really had better step up and do it.
Well, I think Bob is reflective of both his grandfather, who I knew for a few years before he passed, and Egbert, but also his mother and the family. Bob is unassuming. He does not seek the limelight. He, however, is intense and focused on the business, and would expect everyone around him to be so focused.
The development of new storefronts with 35,000 square feet of space was another significant milestone. As part of Bob Beall's overall plan for growth and development, the new corporate center and distribution center opened in 1985 with over 155,000 square feet of floor space. Bealls now had 40 stores and sales reached $82 million in volume.
Obviously, Bealls grew up on the west coast of Florida, here in Bradenton, and we have before the outlets even were thought of, we had stores all over the state of Florida.
Bealls also incorporated an employee 401k, and the chain soon reached 1 million square feet of store floor space.
I was involved from the beginning, where we were, my initial involvement with the outlet was we had taken one of our Pasco department stores that they opened up a new store down the road, and they decided to convert that one into an outlet. And so I was involved with that part of it.
In 1989, under Bob's leadership, 4 additional department stores and 4 outlets opened as sales hit $159 million. By 1990, the outlet business was booming, with over $24 million in sales. By comparison, Bealls department stores had reached that in its 63rd year. The company roster now boasted 2,500 employees.
Bob wanted the company to grow fast. He recognized that the scale would be important. And I guess in the mid-90s, we were very fortunate in that the drugstores, both CVS and Walgreens, were starting to pull out of the strip centers where they had like 10 to 12,000 square foot boxes and building their big freestanding units that you see on every corner now. And we, through Charlie Boscarino at the time, was head of real estate for us, and he built a phenomenal rapport with both CVS and Walgreens. We were scooping up 40, 50 stores a year of theirs. And admittedly now with this model, they were a little small at the time, but God, when they were in the right town, they were money makers.
I think the outlet is tremendously exciting, and it's something that is a clear pathway for us to continue to keep expanding and to keep the company going.
In 1994, Bob became the CEO and chairman of the board as ER retired. And Bob was also named chairman of the board of the Florida Chamber of Commerce.
It's really remarkable, first of all, that a company that's privately held has been able to last 100 years. And Lisa's right, it really starts with the top and the legacy that's really carried down generationally. So I was fortunate enough to have met E.R. Bell, which is Bob's dad, and he had a philosophy and he imparted it on Bob, and Bob has the same philosophy, and Bob's a strong patriarch, and he gives a level of expectation for the family that this is a responsibility. This company you were inherited, passed along to you, and you have a legacy, not just to your fellow shareholders, but your future fellow shareholders. So anytime you see a private company get in trouble, it's usually because the shareholders treat it as a piggy bank, and that hasn't been the case with the Bell family.
I think that we're at a particularly exciting time in retail. The customers changed dramatically in the last 5 years with the economic challenges that the customers face. They've sort of switched their buying patterns, and the outlet in that process has benefited. We've gained sort of a whole new tier of customers who traded into that off-price channel, and we've been able to serve those customers through growth in number of stores and a changing product line. And we've changed a lot in the last 5 years versus what the outlet used to be and what it is today. So,
as part of the vision for new and improved stores, in 1997, Bealls opened the Big Store prototype in Spring Hill. The new store was twice the size of all previous store plans. In 1998, Bob Bell realized that it was critical to develop the next generation of retail professionals and endowed the E.R. Bell Professorship at the University of Florida.
You know, we have partnerships with a number of universities around the state of Florida in particular. We know in our heart that we have to get new talent into the company, and we have to try and attract the best and brightest coming out of the schools. There's a couple of schools, University of Florida in particular and Florida State, that have great retailing programs. And we bring those students here for internships over the summer. We help some of our own employees, children with scholarships to some universities. They may or may not go into the retailing business. We certainly love it if they do. We know we need that influx of new talent coming into the company, and those relationships with those universities are tremendously important at providing us with that new talent.
In addition, Bealls broke ground for a second 270,000 square foot distribution facility in 1998 and entered the e-commerce market with their new website, www.beallsflorida.com. By 2002, Bealls Outlet opened its 400th store, followed the year after by another 76 outlets opening across the Sun Belt.
But then after that became the real challenge, and that was opening out of state. And we couldn't use the name Bealls, so we had to come up with a new name. It was a different demographic market, so the merchants and TN really led this with introducing juniors and young men's and a younger assortment. And that was a big part of the planning, because we were no longer selling to retirees in Florida and Arizona. We now had kids in Georgia and North Carolina and Mississippi and Louisiana and Texas, and we even went out to California, so we technically covered the entire Sun Belt.
We have a great an environment. Everyone feels welcome when they walk into the store. They feel like they're part of the family when they walk in the store, and that's really, really important for us, and that's not what you get with the other major players. By reducing inventory, allowing more space into the stores, allowing the freedom for the managers to really own their store and really merchandise their store according to their market, that freedom and that accountability and that empowerment that they're feeling, I echo Chris's comments. They really have stepped up to that challenge. They're loving the challenge. They're having a lot of fun with their store, which is really what retail is about. And that's, that atmosphere and that passion and energy and that level of fun just spills right over to the customer, and it leaves everyone with a great feeling when they walk and shop our stores.
Well, as the president of the department store, everything you see in the store is under my domain. Every product, all the marketing. So everything that takes to get this store ready for the customers, that's part of my responsibility. Well, you can be behind the desk, but the most important place where you see ideas and hear directly from the customers and the store associates, that's what makes me smart. Every day the customers have new ideas, associates have great ideas, and you don't see that on a piece of paper. So you need to come and see the stores like the customer. That's where I get inspired. So I try and get out to the stores on a regular basis, either formal tours like we did today, or on the weekends, and really follow and see how customers are reacting, because once retailing's in your blood, you got to go where it is, and that's in the store.
In 2004, Bob and his team debuted the classic tagline, "Live the Florida Lifestyle," for the department stores, and the Bealls Design Studio was created to expand its creation of private brands.
We used to say they need to know that we live here, just like they do, and understand what the customer wants. If I want to look like I live in Florida and like it, I'm going to Bealls, and that worked.
And the fourth generation joined the company as Matt Bell began working in the outlet division.
It's mind-boggling, really, to have a company that's been around this long. Of course, I've only been involved with it for 9 years, but I know the history quite well, and it's something that makes you very proud. There's never been anything else that I've wanted to do, never been any other company that I've wanted to work at, and just because of the sense of pride that you feel.
Throughout this period of tremendous growth and development, Bob Bell was the catalyst for change. Thoughtfully considering all the facets and intricacies of developing and growing the company, Bob Bell engineered, designed, and built a company whose corporate structure, financial independence, quality service, and customer loyalty was, and still is, second to none. It has been his tireless efforts and quiet leadership that has led Bealls into the future. Throughout its history, Bealls' development has been defined by innovation, initiative, and technological advancement, qualities that are still evident in so many facets of the Bealls Corporation.
We have multiple cameras per store. Not only do we have cameras, but we also have two-way audio. So not only can we see what's going on, we can interact with the store using microphones, a public address interface. We've reduced our losses by a significant amount. We don't want to be an easy target.
However, Bealls' most important asset has always been its thoughtful, dedicated workforce. And when crisis or catastrophe strikes, Bealls is always ready to take care of its own.
It was supposed to be a Category 2 that skirted our coast and was going to enter in Tampa. And about noon, I guess it was, they said the storm was starting to turn. And
we lost a good portion of our roof, most of the shingles.
My ceilings were collapsed, lost my den.
We had to try to wend our way back, and partway back, met up with my granddaughter, and she came up to the car and said, "Mom, I'm sorry, your home is gone."
And then right away, everybody at Bealls was right there to help us. Jeff Pender was bringing us care packages of food, and Pat Rogers was there to help. Everybody at the store that is my home base, that's store 14, was there to help.
To my pleasant surprise, I got a monetary award from Bealls, which is going to help me very, very much.
There are a lot of people I've talked to that were there working, their companies aren't doing anything for them, and I'm just grateful that I am working for a company that has that type of assistance, and everyone's been so great.
And the Bealls organization in general just is a great company to work for. The monies that Bealls gave us was actually the first money that we had gotten from anybody. We had everything from the point of the storm was out of pocket. We had our insurance company wasn't even answering us. So I just can't thank the people enough that gave of their vacation time or their money to help people out that were in a situation like us. I know people were worse off than us, but the help came at a time that we really needed it, and to work for the kind of people that we work with and the kind of company that we work for is a pleasure.
In 100 years, Bealls has created, built, and sustained a national business model that is second to none. Bealls continues to cultivate a loyal customer base because of their commitment to top-shelf value and service. Just as importantly, in the last 100 years, Bealls has earned a reputation as a caring community partner as well as a good and fair employer.
You know, it's a good place to work where they recognize your skills and abilities and the contributions you've made to the organization and then promoted along the way. Kind of on a personal standpoint, very early on in my career, I had been employed with the company about 12 months and unfortunately came on board with some cancer. And the company assisted me with that in terms of allowing me the necessary time away from work. And even only being employed for 12 months, the company welcomed me back with open arms. They moved me back from Missouri, where I went to recover. And so at a very, very young age, I had a real appreciation for the company.
I still want us to be a great corporate citizen. I still want, when people think of Bealls, to think about customer service, and I still want our employees to want to be around at the company in 35 plus years, and I still want us to have the same principles and guidelines that we have now.
I really found out how Bealls was really family oriented when Hurricane Katrina came, and how everybody participated and sending donations to New Orleans, and that really, really impressed me.
Bealls always gives back too. They're very big with the United Way campaign. They always run that campaign. If hurricanes go through and you're affected, they have a policy to take care of that.
I try to let people know if you go work for Bealls, you have an opportunity to better your education, and they'll pay for it if you maintain a C average. The company will actually pay for it. So I told them it's a great place to work because it can help you advance in life.
I always have in my head to say to somebody that, you know, if you're not nice when you come here, you will be when you leave. That Bealls is just a nice place to work.
I'm very proud to be associated over the last 20 years, that's a fifth of their lifetime, with this fantastic family organization.
A family can't exist without good people within it. This company couldn't exist without good people within it, including the people who lead the family.
Bealls has been a family company, and it's kind of how you grow up in your family. You grow up and you respect each other and you do the right thing at home, and that's kind of how you are expected to be here. You know, it's always about doing the right thing. Senior management has always wanted to do what's right and what's fair.
Integrity and ethics are very much part of the fundamental values of the company.
People are proud of the company. I think that's a big thing. You know, we're proud to work here.
Very wonderful place to work. I love telling people I work for Bealls.
I'm privileged to be here for this long.
Bealls is just a great place to work.
In a business climate where ethics often take a back seat to profit and customer care is a low priority, Bealls has never been afraid to go against the grain and put the well-being of its employees and customers first. Bealls has always been rooted in a commitment to honesty, integrity, determination, and family values. This is as evident today as it was 100 years ago when R.M. Bell first made that journey to Bradentown, and imparted the doctrine of doing the right thing to his children. Generation after generation, Bealls has always been there for its customers, its employees, and its community. The legacy endures, and the tradition continues.